It is so good to see you back here for Module 8, Indigenous Ways of Teaching and Learning. I feel very privileged to bring to you a presentation on Indigenous pedagogies by my colleague in Cultural Studies, Lindsay Brand. Lindsay is a PhD student and educational developer at the Center for Teaching and Learning at Queen's University. The first time I met Lindsay was over the summer of 2021 in an online cultural studies colloquium. Lindsay identified as Indigenous and provided explorations to her dissertation through Indigenous ways of teaching and learning that she was developing. She calls it the pedagogy of peace. We'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. At the beginning of September in 2021, I attended a webinar led by Lindsay introducing Indigenous pedagogies. Over the past year, Lindsay and her colleagues have brought learners many offerings on culturally responsive pedagogies, including Indigenous ways of teaching and learning. The webinar that Lindsay has given me permission to share with you for your viewing is an excellent starting point for learning about Indigenous ways of teaching and learning and how these pedagogies are grounded as ways of being. Lindsay's webinar highlights Indigenous perspectives in relation to Indigenous pedagogies through the Haudenosaunee and Anishinaabe teachings. Okay, so in many respects, I think this module is an excellent entry point in the creation of pedagogy for reconciliation, especially for teachers who do not know where to start. As Lindsay communicates in her webinar, keep it simple. Engage one or two practices so you can develop that comfort in your new process. From there, you can slowly add in one or two more practices and so on to support your progress and journey. We will never fully indigenize our courses, as Lindsay says in the webinar. It will always be a process of reworking, re-envisioning, and reimagining. It is also important to think of ways to bring Indigenous voices through recordings, podcasts, and texts into our curriculum. Elemental to our pedagogy for reconciliation is our ongoing engagement with Indigenous experts, academics, and producers of content as an extension of our critical pedagogies to challenge Western frameworks of knowledge creation. A text that helped me greatly in pushing myself to move forward in a pedagogy for reconciliation is by Paulette Regan. It is called Unsettling the Settler Within: Indigenous Residential Schools, Truth Telling, and Reconciliation in Canada. I have attached a link to the text in the works cited list for this module and also in Module 2 under Settler Colonialism. As I want to respect that Lindsay's webinars are on the Center for Teaching and Learning Queen's University YouTube channel, I'm asking that you go to the YouTube channel, and access Lindsay's webinar from there. The title of Lindsay's webinar is Foundations of Indigenous Pedagogies. It is approximately 23 minutes long. I have the link also in the document under Module 8 with the chapter list for Lindsay's webinar. After watching it again and having attended different iterations of this webinar, I continue to learn. I hope that it will be a good reference for you and that you can keep it as a go-to resource for your pedagogical process. Another recording by Lindsay I also strongly recommend. It is called The Pedagogy of Peace, a model for decolonizing and indigenizing teaching and learning practices. Again, I have put a link for Lindsay's workshop in the document under Module 8 and also under Works Cited. At the end of Lindsay's webinar, I ask that you engage in one more activity, which is a reflection question from Lindsay's presentation. What are the benefits for all students of integrating Indigenous approaches into curriculum? And also, I'm going to ask you, is this something you can envision in your pedagogy for reconciliation? Again, I want to thank you for your time and for your effort and openness to participate in these modules. And as always, I want to show works that I've talked about in the module. And I know it's a bit repetitive, but those links are also cited in my document.